The Chicago Bulls have already met with or set meetings for a few of the prospects in this draft. We're going to talk a little bit about what that means and the common themes that are there. We're going to look at that. Plus, we're going to do what I hope AK does not watch. We're going to look at the best guard prospects for the Chicago Bulls in the 2025 draft. We're going to get into all that and more right after this. What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today. So first, I know we've been doing these player profiles. We're going to continue that, of course, but I want to look at the players that the Bulls have already set meetings with. We got word on quite a bit of players. Yesterday, we have 6 players that the Bulls have either met with or have meetings scheduled with. And so those players include Asa Newell, the big man out of Georgia, who is either going to be a power forward or center at the next level, depending on how the makeup of the team goes. But this is a guy with tremendous defensive upside. I do think the conversation around Asa Newell, I've been part of that as well, has kind of shifted on him because of him looking at not being able to play center, right? But I think overall, when you factor in, even if he turns into power forward, which isn't necessarily the worst thing possible, you then have offense with Modest Buzelis, who still is growing defensively as well. You have defense with Asa Newell, who's still going to grow offensively, right? He has an offensive game as well. I'm not mad at that as a 3-4 matchup, right? Like, I'm higher on Thomas Sorber because I do think he is more equipped to play the center in the NBA than Asa Newell is, but the Bulls have met with him. The Bulls have also met with guard Jase Richardson. We'll talk a little bit about him more in detail today, the guard out of Michigan State. They've met with Colin Murray-Boyles out of South Carolina. This is the guy that I am not very high on at all. I do think it would be very rough if the Bulls draft him, but hey, I'm open to being wrong on that. If the Bulls do draft him, we'll see how he works. One thing about Colin Murray-Boyles, regardless of the physical things that I think he may have trouble with in the NBA, he doesn't have the P. Will mentality. I've seen people be like, oh, it's going to be P. Will if that. He does not have the P. Will mental issues at all. Like Colin Murray-Boyles, as much as I can say that I have some concerns about him at the next level, his aggressiveness and drive to be great is not the thing that I can doubt in that at all. Like even me being a critic of him, I know that this kid loves the game of basketball. He's gonna be out there competing. He's gonna give tons of effort, and I don't see him being one of those players that shrinks away, right? Even if you don't give him a lot of shots, I think he's gonna take that as bet. I'm gonna hang my hat on defense. I'm about to go shut a couple of people down. And I'll catch you in transition. I think that'll be the case with CMB. I still look at him as a guy that's in a guard's body, but has a more of a modern center type game. But hey, we'll see what happens there. Liam McNeely, the forward out of UConn, is another guy. Now, Liam McNeely is a guy that he can shoot the ball like crazy. Catch and shoot, coming off drives, shooting off the dribble. He has everything that you want as a shooter. He also has more of a mid-range game. He has a float game down there that I like as well. Liam McNeely is another guy. He'll be on my sleepers or kind of underrated players list when I release that over the course of this week as well. Then you have Thomas Sorber. That's the guy I'm really high on. If anybody on this list, he's the guy that I think that I'm highest on, and I think is realistic that the Bulls could take at number 12. Thomas Sorber, really high on that list. And then guard Trey Johnson. Now, the Bulls meeting with Trey Johnson, of course, it's made people ask, are the Bulls going to move up? Are the Bulls going to be willing to move Coby? And maybe that's the case. I don't know, but Trey Johnson doesn't shape up to be anywhere close to 12, no matter how far he falls down. I think the lowest I've seen him go is 8th, but I guess you never know, right? So those are the players that the Bulls have met with. And Liam McNeely and Trey Johnson are two players that offense is the focus, right? Like what they can bring offensively, shooting-wise, creating-wise, that's what really stands out about them. That's their kind of theme between those two players. One's a guard, one's going to be a small forward, but I think Trey Johnson as well, like he has catch and shoot, creating himself. Like he can do a lot when it comes to scoring. defense isn't his strongest suit, but scoring wise, he's the total package, right? He has lead your offense type offensive potential. The other guys, Asa Newell, Colin Murray Boyles, Thomas Sorber, those are all defense focused. Like, make no mistake about it, they have offensive upside as well, but you're talking about defense with those guys. And I like where the Bulls' mentality is with that, if that's where they're thinking about going. So, I think that you're starting to see some themes. Maybe even some potential to maybe even trade back into the first round if you're looking at Liam McNeely. I don't think you take him at number 12. Or it could just be that the Bulls are doing what the Bears do in their draft process, and they're looking at everyone to then see what options that they have in front of them as the draft process goes on. I guess we'll end up seeing. I'm not getting into Jase Richardson because on this list, because we're actually going to talk about him in the next segment when we get into the best guard candidates here for the Chicago Bulls. But let me know what you guys think on that and the players that the Bulls have met with, and what do you think that means, if anything, for the Bulls draft process. But with that said, let's transition to what we've been doing all week, and we have been looking at guards. Looking at NBA prospects. Today we're looking at guards. Again, this is the list that I hope AK is not listening to. But with that said, there's a number of guards, right? Of course, look at the best two guards in this draft, VJ Edgecombe, Dylan Harper. I'm not going to cover them just because, they're definitely not falling to the Bulls range. They're just not falling to the Bulls range. Jeremiah Fears gets to the first one where you start thinking, okay, maybe. Even him, he's slated, by most mocks to go anywhere between 5 and 8. So it's still some question on if he would even be able to be there. But when you look at Jeremiah Fears, if Trey Johnson does fall later into the draft, like around that 8th area, it's because somebody took a shot on Jase Richardson early. You look at his ball handling, the athleticism, the playmaking that he has. This kid has upside that's really crazy when it looks down to it. You look at some of the comparisons to him, Jaden Ivey, Devin Harris. These have been some guys that he's been comped to as well, and I like those comps for Jeremiah Fears. The question is, though, is that when it comes down to it, it's just like the Bulls don't need it, right? The Bulls don't need it, and I guess that's kind of the overarching thing. I'm not going to say that with every guard that we have here because I think most Bulls fans understand at this point, like, guards shouldn't really be what the Bulls' focus is on, but hey, you just never know what's going to happen there. John Wall is another guy that he's drawn some comps to as well. When you look at his game, this guy, when he gets downhill, he's a beast. He's an absolute monster when he gets downhill and he get that quick first step when it comes down to someone. He's gonna have to work on that first step a little bit because I do think he's gonna face stronger defensive players than he has in college. But I think that's fair. He's one of the youngest players in this draft. He will not turn 19 into mid-October. That's after the season starts, right? He also has had one of the highest usage rates of any freshman in college basketball last year. And so that's what it comes down to when you look at that. I think you always want to look at high usage players. Like, all right, how much of that high usage are you going to have at the NBA level? But when you look at it, the way that he gets to the paint, the way that he draws fouls, it's something that like Coby White's just starting to do more this past season of drawing fouls consistently, him and Josh Giddey for that matter. But that's something that as a guard, especially a guard that can turn into a 3-level guard, that's a really important factor to have there. Now, the problem with Jeremiah Fears is that the three-point shooting isn't consistent. Only 4 3-point attempts per game last year, and he shot that at 28%. So, he has the good mechanics. Again, it'll be great if we had a shooting coach named Peter Patton around, but nonetheless, he's going to be able to take players because of his quick first step. He can take players off the dribble. He can get to the mid-range where he has a lot better of a frequency shooting is in that mid-range. And while he has tremendous athleticism, I wouldn't call him necessarily a great finisher around the rim yet, right? You're not going to see very many kind of the explosive dunks, right? Like that, but he is an athlete. So, that's something that also maybe he can work at. And even if he doesn't end up being somebody who dunks like crazy, he is going to have those layups and those type of things that can get there. He understands how to accelerate. But yeah, I think that it's a lot of caveats that come with Jeremiah Fears. It's like he does this, but this, or he doesn't do this, but he does do that. Like, there's a lot of buts when it comes down to it, but his handle's really good. He has comfort in it. He does not shy away at taking players off the dribble. So I think I look at Jeremiah Fears and I say, it's a player that I like. But again, I hope the Bulls don't go guard, but if they do, that's more of a project, right? Next up, Trey Johnson. This is another guy That like I've said, I doubt that he falls to the Chicago Bulls, but because they met with him, I feel like it's fair to cover him. We've talked about him before. He can have every bit catch and shoot, pull up threat, scoring out on the perimeter, 39%, basically a 40% 3-point shooter, almost 7 attempts per game, 19.9 points per game last year. You measured in at 6'3" and a half, basically at the draft combine, with which shoes still puts him close to 6'5". He was listed as 6'6" before, so there's some questions on that. I don't think he's going to be a small forward going into the league. He's going to be a shooting guard, and that's perfectly fine. I think players that have a defined position, that's going to be fine. Again, under Billy Donovan, though, if the Bulls were to get him, probably going to be a center. But with that said, you look at the size that he still does have. He still does have good positional size. He still does have a good wingspan. All those things. He could be a 3-level scorer at the next level. And I'll say this, his scoring next to Josh Giddey would almost be perfect. Now, you don't have the defense, and that's something that is really a knock right now on Trey Johnson, is that he does not have the defense, right? But I think overall, like, he's also slight of frame at 190 pounds, but he has the frame that he looks like he's going to be able to put on some weight. I don't know if he's ever going to be like the biggest guard, but I think he can get up to about 202, 205 comfortably with putting on weight over the course of the time. But overall, like, this is a guy that just, like I said, every bit of the advanced scoring that you want, he has, right? Some of the comps for him have been Terrence Ross, Allen Houston, O.J. Mayo, which I know the way that O.J. Mayo's career. Again, when you hear people do comparisons, I got to say this in every video, it's the skill set, not necessarily the caliber of player. So keep that in mind as well there. But Trey Johnson, Cam Thomas has been another comp for him. When he gets the ball in his hands, he's dangerous. But where he has some things that like a Coby White doesn't have, and I'm only comparing him to Coby White because he's a guard on this team that I know my fan base is going to be familiar with for sure, where Coby has had to learn to be an off ball, and he's really still not great at that. He's not a great catch and shoot player either. That's where really Trey Johnson can excel at. So even if he does have to play with a true point guard that's kind of more ball dominant, Trey Jones has that, right? And so I think when it comes down to like, offense is not the problem. How much of a defensive liability is he going to be, and how much can he get there? I think when you look at him as well, he's an active defender at times. He shows a bit of awareness on the defensive side of the ball. So I think that's going to be something to learn. He's had some trouble in pick and roll, but that can be troubling for any young player. I think all those things put him in a spot right now where, hey, this is a guy that can be the engine of your offense, period. He has that. He can be the engine of your offense. The question is like, how much of the physical part is he going to adjust to? How much of an adjustment is that going to be for him? But outside of that, I think you look at Trey Johnson, and he brings a lot of what you would want as a guard, especially if you're looking to fit next to Josh Giddey. But all right, let's move on to the next one. Kasparas Jakucionis. Man, listen, I'm KJ out of Illinois. I'll get to say his name. This is a guy that some people definitely have mocked to go with the Chicago Bulls. 19, 6'6", 200 pounds, playmaker, amazing playmaker when it comes down to it. This guy is the definition of a on-the-court general, or on-the-court coach, however you want to look at it, right? He's playmaking is his greatest thing. But he's also a 32% three-point shooter, which is okay. 6.2 rebounds, 4.5 assists. This is a guy that's going to be able to rebound well. He's going to be able to create. And his scoring isn't necessarily going to be the thing that you look at for the most. But listen, I want to be clear here. He still has some scoring upside as well, as much as going to be talked about that he's not. He is an amazing passer, though. That's the thing. People have said he's right behind him, and Egor Demin are the best passers in this draft. So when you look at it, like, yeah, I like him. I love it when it comes down to it. As far as that, the question is, don't we already have that? In describing him, a lot of what you describe is also things that that Josh Giddey has. And that therein lies the problem, right? Even with going guard in this. Like, if you go after KJ, you're going after a player that's simulating already what you have. Now, wants to say that, all right, bet. What if you don't re-sign Josh Giddey? Okay, cool. So you're getting younger Josh Giddey that's in a similar mode, a little bit shorter, but can bring some similar things. Okay, cool. I mean, he has, like I said, he does have more offensive upside. I do think that. I know we've seen Josh Giddey average 20 points. I'll say this. I think it could be more fluid if it's KJ out there. But is that what the Bulls are going to want? Are they going to want to reset at a position that they could already have, or are they going to want to add something that the team is missing, right? But there are some mocks that have him going. I don't know if he falls necessarily to the Chicago Bulls, but he is a player that a lot of mocks are talking about coming to the Chicago Bulls. Like I said, he does have tremendous upside. I do really like this kid. If we didn't have Josh Giddey, he is somebody that I would look at and say, hey, him next to Coby, right? And so I think that's what you're looking at the last two guys. Trey Johnson would be better, not better. He'd be a more seamless fit next to Giddey than what Coby has been, but Coby and Giddey are figuring it out. I think KJ will be more of a fit next to Coby White without them having to do as much figuring it out. But again, are you going to want to reset the deck that way? Maybe, right? I mean, you never know what the Chicago Bulls are going to do, but I think and he's also more of an athlete. I missed that part. He is more of an athlete than Josh Giddey. He has length. He has more of an explosive thing when it comes down to it. And I think that defensively, I think there's going to be a lot of the same there. But overall, I think when you look at KJ, you look at his body makeup, you look at all that, he's a guy that he's going to be good at the NBA level. It's not a question of he's going to be good. The question more so is, does he fit what the Bulls need, right? And that would be the question there. But all right, let's get into the next one. One of the players that the Bulls have a meeting scheduled with, and that is Jase Richardson. Now, this is a guy that is a two-way combo guard. I think he can play the point. I think he can play the shooting guard. Is 6'3", 192 pounds, but he's almost 20 years old. This is a guy, when you look at it, he can score out on the perimeter. He moves off ball consistently. He has solid ball handling when you get to it, when you get in there. And this is a guy as well that you look at Jase Richardson and you're just like, hey, this guy has something here. Some of the comps that he's gotten, Darius Garland, Kirk Heinrich, right? These are guys that I know Bulls fans have had an interest in. I've seen you guys. I've talked to you guys about it. Again, not to say that people here don't have talent. They absolutely do. I just don't know if that's where the Bulls need to be going with that, right? But overall, like if the Bulls were to draft Jase Richardson, for example, I don't know if that means that he's going to replace either Coby or Giddey. What I look at that is and saying Jase Richardson has the possibility of being more of a Ayo Dosunmu replacement off your bench. Jase Richardson can be that guy that is your first guard off the bench if you already have set guards there that are starting, and I like it. Now, he's smaller than Ayo Dosunmu, but I do think that this is a guy that puts in tremendous work on both sides of the ball, and his defense is no slouch. Now, I don't think he's going to be the on-ball defender that Ayo is and has shown himself to be, but if you end up paying Josh Giddey, you end up paying Coby White, maybe you're not going to you're not going to pay Ayo Dosunmu with those guys as well. Who knows? Jase Richardson is a really good player. His floor is high. His ceiling is high as well, right? He was a guy that didn't have a high usage rate either. So the numbers that he was able to put up, the 12 points on 62% true shooting, 41% three-point shooter, 2 assists per game, 3 steals per game. This is a guy that I really like. He's an efficient player that is smart. He's a super smart. He can create his own shot as well, right? And I like that when it comes down to it. He has really good footwork as well, which is good offensively and defensively for him also. So I see this like, I don't know if a team would see him as the lead guard, but I tell you what, there are teams that and that's why some mocks have him slated to go later in this draft, but if you get him, I think that while position may be a concern, if he's coming off the bench for you, it's not as much of a concern. I think that you can see a place exactly where, with the explosiveness and all that, it is what it is. Now, he's not his father, right? He didn't get Jason Richardson. If those that don't know, Jase Richardson is Jason Richardson's son. He didn't get his dad's level of athleticism, but this dude is still a really good athlete. He works his ass off. He puts work in the gym, and I like the kid's skill set. So there you go. The last guy that we're going to cover here, and I know people are going to ask, Hayes, what about Cedric Coward? I actually covered him on Forge yesterday, so if you're asking about that. But Egor Demin, this is another guy that I loved coming into this draft process, right? I think when you have questions about other people on your roster, if they're going to be here long term or not, it makes sense to look at Egor Demin. He has his passing, the best passer in this class, by far the best passer in this class. And I think also like one of the things that he's a really solid defender, especially off ball. On ball can be a bit of a struggle for him at times, but I think that you've seen enough to where his on-ball defense is going to be fine when it comes down to it, right? Now, he is pressured sometimes defensively, which throws off his scoring a little bit, right? But 16 points per game on 50% true shooting, 18% three-point shooter, though. Not a threat right now to stretch the floor at all, but the 6.8 rebounds, what he does creatively, offensively wise, he's drawing comparisons to Josh Giddey, Sean Livingston, right? Those type of players that you've looked at if you want to get into that. Egor Demin is a really, really good prospect in this draft. The question isn't, is he a good prospect? The question is he a good prospect for the Bulls? And that's where the questions start to rise at. But ESPN had a mock to the Bulls literally right after the draft lottery. So, that take that for what you will, right? But Josh Giddey is a really good comp for him. And the question is like, don't we already got that? Right? So, you look at it when it comes down to it, but the passing, he is, when you look at the varying of passes that this kid throws, bounce passes, chest passes, darts, lobs, he can do every single type of pass that you could want from a point guard position. His IQ, extremely high. His feel for the game, extremely high. And so I think that's great. The way that he puts pressure, once the ball gets in his hands, defenses has to pay attention to what he's doing because he's that much of a threat passing-wise. And I think when his shot is falling, when he is scoring and he gets into that rhythm, pick your poison at that point in time. The question is how much of that rhythm is he going to get into, how consistently at the NBA level. And that's where a question rises in for him, right? So, listen, the lateral mobility defensively is a little bit for him. He has the thin frame, so that leaves some questions for him defensively. But like I said, his off-ball defense is really good. And his footwork on defense is really good. So I do think that this is a player that you can work some with to maybe become a functional defender in a team defensive concept, especially if you're willing to go zone defense because of his length and everything that he has. But that's the biggest questions for him. So let me know what you guys think. Again, I know there are more guards we'll get into when we get into some of our underrated players. I will, for my Florida guys, I will cover Walter Clayton. Don't worry about it. He's going to be on one of the underrated lists. I will cover him probably on the episode tomorrow because I really want to get into Walter Clayton's game because he is a guy that I absolutely love in this draft overall as well. So, but that's the guards. Let me know what you guys think on it down below. Let me know who your favorite guard is in this draft, even if it's not for the Bulls. But you guys can follow us at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullscentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that's thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you right if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.